And the Hangout is on air. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Because Money podcast. I'm Jackson Middleton, joined by Rob Engen and Sandy Martin. It's been a long time since we've broadcasted, and you know what? That's okay, because life happens. So here we are again. We're back. We're changing things up a little bit. We're not going to be doing live participation during the show using the hashtag Because Money. But if you would like to talk about anything that we talk about in this episode, or you get all fired up and you hate something that Sandy says, then you know what? Let's talk about that in the Google Plus community. We've got the Because Money podcast, the Canadian finance community. We've got that there. We'll be posting this show there. So if you've got any conversation, if you love something Rob says, let him know in that hangout, and we'll go from there. But yeah, no live interaction. Enjoy the show. We talk about money and bad money, good money, Canadian money, what we like about money, what we don't like about money. So here we go. Today we're talking about extra money. How do you make more money beyond your regular job? And Rob, seeing as though he has 43 different jobs, he's going to take it away. So Rob, on to you.
Well, thanks, Jackson, and it's good to be back here chatting with you guys. Yeah, I wanted to talk about earning extra money. And oftentimes personal finance. You read the personal finance books and all the blogs, and they all focus on ways to save money. And I find that you can only cut your expenses so far, where you're not really enjoying life. When you start rinsing out your Ziploc bags and whatever you want to get everything down to the bare bones. You start to not enjoy life so much anymore. So. I want to focus more on ways to earn extra money and what that's all about, and tell you a little bit about how I do that, and you guys can chime in as well, because you're all running different gigs as well. And I just find when I started blogging, the idea was, yeah, I heard that you could earn a few extra bucks on the side, and so that's how it started. When my mom and I started Boomer and Echo, and we started earning $100 a month or $200 a month, and you look at that and you think, hey, you know what? That's paying my heating bill, or that's paying for my utilities, and certainly feels a lot better than trying to cut $200 out of your budget a month. So that built up to pretty substantial side business where. All of a sudden, it wasn't just my heating bill or my utility bill, but it was now paying my mortgage and that sort of thing too. And so, earning extra money kind of came out of a little bit out of necessity. We had our first child and decided and had to make that decision of, will my wife go back to work? We find childcare, or will she stay home and look after the kids, and for how long? And so we did a little bit of that math and just figured out that it just wasn't worthwhile, at least at this point, to do that. So how do we replace, the $20,000-$30,000 a year that, as a second income, because now you're living on one. And so, I started the blog not to think I could earn $30,000 a year, but you have to start somewhere. And so over time, all that has led to other gigs. I write for the Toronto Star. And have other side businesses now. I offer financial planning services as well. So all that is kind of morphed into a pretty decent, kind of second income. So that's where I'm at. But I hear tons of other stories from people who run other things. It's not just about writing a blog. People have all kinds of skills, whether that's photography or contract work, handyman kind of work, or lawn care, snow removal, contract cleaning, you name it. There's all kinds of potential out there to run a business outside of your normal day job. And so I kind of want to throw it out to you two and ask, what do you think about that? Is that a worthwhile task to start looking at your free time and saying, instead of sitting here watching TV for 8 hours at night when I get home, or whatever the case may be, can you put a little bit of your skill to work and start earning a couple of different income streams?
Oh, let me jump in. I mean, of course, we don't. When you focus just on, and we've talked about that a lot. When you focus just on reducing your expenses, there's really kind of a bottom limit where you kind of have to stop. Like recycling toilet paper. I don't know, whatever the worst gross thing you can think of is. So of course, not only do you want to talk about reducing your expenses, you want to talk about increasing your income. So it's a side hustle, or it's actually increasing your skills, or it's trying to find a different job, or whatever that is. I have nothing against increasing your income, and I have nothing against mindfully using otherwise completely useless time in your life, binge watching, what is it, Homeland?
Yeah.
Yeah, Rob watches Homeland, everybody. We're not sure why, but he binge watches Homeland. There's so many other good shows out there to watch, and he's picking Homeland. Maybe because it's on Netflix or something.
Yep, that was it.
Wow.
But it makes sense. I mean, mindfully using your time is the same thing as mindfully using your money, right? Time and money, to me, are the two big tools that we have to accomplish things with. So if you have extra time, or you can make extra time, and it's worth it to you given what you're giving up, then of course go and make some income. My thing is always, my dad is an executive coach, so a lot of the things that the phrases that I use are his. I'm just going to like pretend that there's a little, my dad said this, because I didn't come up with it. So he always said that you have to be really clear about the stuff that you will say yes to, because otherwise you're going to say yes to everything. So some opportunity comes up that, you've started this sort of side business and it's going really well, and that's fantastic. At some point you have to assess where your boundaries are, because I know we were just saying this before we went on air. If I had to work full tilt every hour of every day, parenting, wifing, whatever that is, house cleaning, doing my job, and then doing a side income, and I really didn't get a break for whatever length of time, I would be a crazy person. It's not worth it to me to do that. My pie is my availability is this big, and if I add something to it, I have to take something away. So that something better be really worthwhile.
Well, and that's kind of my story on that, Sandy, because I hear exactly what you're saying. When I got into mortgages, I just found that my job, being self-employed, I wasn't restricted to the government job hourly wage. I was basically able to work as hard and as long as I wanted, and I just got used to doing that. I was working the 6 days a week, sometimes up to 12, 14 hours a day. Why? I loved what I was doing. I was good at it, and it was a lot of fun. So I just worked. I worked hard. And what happened is, when you're a single guy, that's easy. When you're married, okay, yeah, it's still doable. I mean, I'm still self-employed. I'm working kind of from home. You add kids into the mix, what happens is your lifestyle gets used to the high spend, and you can't pull back. So I would caution anybody who's looking to add extra spend to their wallet, don't get used to that lifestyle, or you're going to get used to working that hard and you'll burn out. And
Right.
Case in point is exactly what I did. Now, it wasn't extra jobs, it was just my job, but pulling it back is way harder. And I wish that I would have learned to live within my limits first, and then gone out for a little bit more. But that part that you're talking about, Rob, has to be controlled.
Yeah, and I like how you talked about the increasing spending, like doing this to increase spending, and that's something we were really conscious about, like not getting your lifestyle carried away because you're bringing in some extra money every month, and that use that wisely to further your financial goals, right? So. Now it can act as a bit of an emergency fund in case something goes awry, or it can, help me get to my financial independence day sooner, or whatever the case may be. It can further those goals along. And so as long as you're not just kind of keeping up with the Joneses, like with yourself, I guess, and that extra money that you're earning, then I think you'll be okay.
And I think the problem that some people have is, if they've got the full-time job and they're going to add the extra job, it's kind of like, it almost, because they're thinking about doing it and they're thinking about executing it, it's almost like, oh, well, my reward will be, I need this equipment or I need this investment, so I'll just take out a loan at the start. And you get into debt because you've got this grandiose plan of extra working, but then you're just working to pay off your debt. I've done that several times, I mean, man, I started a social media consultancy business, and, well, my computers are too small. I need big monitors. So I go out and I buy, but it's the mindset you can get into, and you don't even know you're doing it until you realize, well, that's not all that smart. You're watching something like Shark Tank, and, they're all talking about never start a business in debt, and then it's like, oh, yeah, that's actually good advice. I know we've talked about that before, but, I mean, just don't assume that because you're willing to work the extra hours that you should probably go into debt for it. Work a year and then pay for what you want with the money you've made.
Yeah. And it's on the time side, taking up that extra however many hours of free time. In my case, it was, like I said, we just had a baby, and once she got onto like a normal sleep routine at I hesitate to say it was at the 6 week mark because that's pretty. You guys will reach across and hit me, but it was pretty early. So come the summertime, we're kind of stuck in our own home because you've got your kid sleeping, so you can't really go out or do anything, and there's nothing on TV in the summer and whatever. So I started writing articles, and so that's kind of how that happened. And so now, our kids go to bed at a decent time, and I imagine as they get older and get busier, we're starting to feel that now as they get into different activities, that evening time is getting sucked away. And so I've got to start to prioritize, maybe it's early mornings I'm writing or sometimes on the weekends. But, it started out in kind of a perfect place where, I had this free time in the evenings, but I was at home. So what do I do with it? Well, it's a home-based business. Well, I started blogging and writing.
So what you do, though, for the most part, if you have to communicate with anybody, you can do it by email. If it's really urgent, it's easy to send a quick email kind of during business hours. You don't have people calling you. You don't have to be sort of available for that. So I wonder how, and obviously this is just me navel gazing because I can't really wrap my head around it. Like I know people that run kind of a side cleaning business, so they shouldn't be taking kind of calls for that at their place of business where they actually can do their 9 to 5 stuff. So how do you manage that? Is yours a special case, or how do you manage working your normal time and then doing this stuff too?
Well, when I moved over to the university where I work now, now I'm on kind of government hours, so I go in at 8:30, I'm done at 4:30. Whereas when I was working in the hotel industry before I started these second kind of jobs or whatever, it was a lot more demanding. There was more travel. I was working 60 plus hours a week, and we oftentimes on the weekends there was no real set schedule. So whenever the hotel was busy, I was kind of there. And now I've got that pace more controlled, where I live 5 minutes away from work. I can be home by 4:45. So I've got that free time, and I use it, say, kind of in the morning before I go to work, and then in the evening after the kids go to bed. And that's what I kind of consider, my second income stream hours or whatnot. And certainly, people aren't calling me during work hours, but they're, I do obviously get emails or respond to comments or whatever. So, I'll put up my hand and admit to that. It happens, but that's you bring up an interesting point about other types of jobs where you have to be either physically present or answering phone calls or whatever. That would make it a challenge if you're doing that kind of in conjunction with a day job.
How disciplined do you have to be? Like how stringent are your rules around when you're working and when you're not? Can it creep? How there's spending and lifestyle creep? Is there second income and second job creep?
Yeah, there is, and like I said, I kind of mentioned that earlier. As our kids get a little bit older and busier now, I don't want to be answering blog emails and working on articles when my kids are still around, or I got to take them to baseball or whatever. I don't. So I don't want to be doing that. So I do make rules, and one of them is, I'm the first one up, and I'm up for at least an hour before anyone else gets out of bed. So, I use that time to do my promotion or to do a bit of research or writing and that sort of thing. Writing for the Star, that's when I do a lot of trying to source out, other contacts because they're working in Eastern Canada typically. So I'm able to contact them, say at 6:30 my time. They're just getting started out there, and so I'm able to connect there. So it is about prioritizing and trying not to let it creep, and sometimes it does, but for the most part, I try to keep my family time as as sacred as I can.
Let me jump in here. Rob, let's say somebody's watching this and they've got a full-time job and they're considering adding a second job or kind of starting their own small business on the side, what advice would you give to that person about how to structure their business? Because I know that a lot of people would start the business and then just not have any idea about taxes or anything like that, or to do that. What have you found successful in that kind of area?
Don't do what I do, I guess. We just kind of jumped in with both feet and just started doing it. And when we started earning some income, then we kind of worried about that at that time. When you mentioned like feeling the need to have the other, the bigger computer and the business cards and all that, I'd kind of forgo all that. I wouldn't worry about that so much. When I'm talking about earning second incomes, I'm typically talking about kind of a freelance work, not a I'm working, for 4 hours in the evening at stocking shelves or something like that. So it's taking on a job, say it's a web design or something like that, where you can have a client, you can see the project through in your spare time, and then you'll understand how that looks and feels and how that fits into your schedule, and then you can build that business around that. And one example I'll use is when we started the financial planning side of it, is we really had no idea what we were doing or what kind of response we would get. And so what did that look and feel like when I already have a full-time job and other kind of blog and writing commitments? Well, it looked like I could probably take on 1 or 2 clients a month. And for the most part, that's kind of how it's been working. I get other inquiries and whatnot, but 1 to 2 clients a month, that feels right, and that feels like I'm not, infringing on any other part of what I do with my regular job or writing. So I think you just kind of have to feel it out for yourself and see what's comfortable, and kind of avoid, like you said, those extravagant, or not extravagant, but the extra kind of frivolous purchases that you don't really need, that might be kind of cool, but maybe you can get away with just kind of bootstrapping it for a while.
What would it take to make you drop something?
Now I'm at the point where it's kind of weighing the time versus money aspect of it, where is this, and the enjoyment of it too, obviously. Like I enjoy doing the financial planning. I can see myself doing that more than doing writings per se. So I think if that became more stable, as in the inquiries were a little more stable, and I could guarantee that I'd be getting 2 clients a month, then I'd consider dropping, say, a writing gig or a blog or something like that. That's the trouble with the contract or the freelancing, is that it's not as stable, right? And so, as much as it's weird to say, the blogging income is, it's actually been pretty stable for the last couple of years. So that's some money I know I can count on. And certainly writing for the Star, I mean, I get paid to write there, so I get paid for as much as I produce. And so it's hard to kind of turn down those opportunities. Versus something where you're kind of dipping your toes in, but you don't really know what you're going to expect. So you don't really know what that return is going to be. But I could probably tell you that I'm tapped out right now. I've reached kind of this is enough, and so we'll see. If another opportunity came up, I would definitely have to look at dropping something else.
I suppose, though, I mean, sorry, Jackson, I have to ask this question. I suppose, though, that what you're doing is building potential kind of early retirement streams of income, right? Like if you got to a point where you felt like you had hit or were close to hitting your financial independence day, if we can borrow John Chavreau's nomenclature, then I guess it gives you the option of saying, okay, I've tried all these other things. I enjoy these 2. They make enough that, I mean, I can leave my job and my cushy hours and my pension, and I can actually transition to this. I know. But if you did, I mean, if you ever got close enough that you could start thinking about, I want my lifestyle now, I suppose that those give you that opportunity.
Yeah, so that's the idea. I mean, going back to the main point of, or what's the point of earning extra income and whatnot. And so when I go back to the hotel, I worked there 60 hours a week. It was right before the financial crisis, and it hit the hospitality industry really hard. We went through 3 years of wage freezes, not knowing kind of where our revenue was declining, not knowing how you're going to kind of turn that around. And so 3 years of wage freeze, and then you just have a baby, and you're going to go have a maternity leave or EI for a year, and then have to decide whether you're going to have to, or you have daycare expenses or stay at home full time. And so you got big decisions now. And so I moved over to the university, and it was for more money. But then now the university is under budget pressures and we've been under wage freeze for 2 years now. And So again, you can't, and that's why I say, like, we talk about Gen Y and coming into the job workplace, these cushy jobs now where you say you get the job and you get a guaranteed 4 to 5% raise every year. That it's not happening. You're getting temporary work. You're not getting that kind of continuing full-time position, so you're not getting pensionable service if you're in a job that offers that. So you almost need this entrepreneurial mindset, I think, to develop something else, some other marketable skill that you can do on the side, because you just don't know. Gone are these careers where you can last 30 years and then retire at 55 or 60 with a full pension. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and I'm gonna throw this out there. Something else to watch out for is, there's the amount of work that you're doing, but it's also kind of oversaturating yourself with a certain type of work. Like, I moved in from brokering into more of a full-time social media marketing. I mean, my position is the VP in sales of marketing. So when I freelance, I kind of tend to freelance in that type area. So I've moved over and started doing this full time, and I've actually let go some of my contracts because I feel it's been distracting me from my full-time job. I'm not spending enough time in my job. I don't have those boundaries, and I want to make sure that, when I'm working for First Foundation, I'm giving them my 100%. And, so it's not just a simple, I guess what I'm saying is I've had to ongoing evaluation of what I'm doing, what it looks like. I mean, it's funny that we say it's like freelancing extra jobs. That's always been my job. Like, that's all I've ever done is pick up work, and, whether it be sales, whether it be house flipping, oh, that looks shiny, I'll take that. So for me, I'm always kind of moving up the property ladder, the whatever, and sometimes it bites you and sometimes you're successful. But what I found very good recently is to really refocus and just really sit in one place and do a really exceptional job at what I'm doing, and I'm actually loving it. Not saying I'm not going to freelance anymore, but I mean, you just have to understand yourself well enough to know, I mean, there's no use taking on an extra job if that's all you're going to think about, if it's going to wreck what you're doing in the day.
Yeah, and the like the financial planning gig is a perfect example of kind of getting, like, I don't think as much as I've started other blogs and whatnot, I don't think I could write anymore about personal finance or outside of what I'm doing now, and so taking on another kind of writing assignment doesn't really interest me. So that's why I like the financial planning aspect of it. Is kind of it's still in that stream. It's a different, has a different feel to it. It's not a chore of, I have to put out some content this week. It's, I'm actually helping someone with a problem. So, so that's been fun, and I think I would get a lot of burnout from writing. There's a good Tom Drake, who runs a Canadian finance blog. He actually offers a service to other bloggers, and I should probably take him up on this one day. Is that blogging or website work, you need a bit of the back end expertise, I guess, of dealing with all your different plugins and the design of the site and how it's running and that sort of thing. And so he offers a service where he'll partner with your business. He'll take care of all of that on the back end, and he's streamlined that through owning multiple blogs. And then you can just focus on writing if that's what you like. And so here's another example of someone who's found kind of a need. You've got all these bloggers, but they're burning out because they just can't handle all the back end stuff. And so he'll take care of that for you because he's figured out a process to do it. I mean, there's so many different examples of ways to do this where you can either do it from home or you leverage some other asset that you have. I mean, I'm working with a contractor who's doing our basement, and he's got a roofing company, and he's got the contracting company. He's doing all kinds of side gigs outside of a normal, contracted job that he's got with one of the home builders here. And just countless examples of ways you can kind of broaden your income streams.
I would like to broaden my income stream by choosing what other people watch on Netflix.
Now, how would that work,
start a
Sandy?
service. I will just control your television for you.
I don't think I would
Be
pay you
prepared
for
for
that.
Doctor Who. Done.
So one example in the housing industry is that, you know, obviously houses are becoming, or, you know, they're super expensive in a lot of areas, and so people that are maybe stretching a little bit to buy their home in Vancouver, Toronto, and Calgary, you know, the old rent out your basement. What do you guys think of that strategy as far as an income stream? You're not doing anything more. It's kind of more of that passive income, but passive in a sense that someone's in your home. And how comfortable you feel in that. And so I was going to lead into it was Sean Cooper. I think he writes on $1 Million Journey. Met him at the Personal Finance Blogging Conference in Toronto. And here's a 29-year-old guy who bought a home in Toronto, and he lives in the basement and rents out the whole top floor to a family for, I think it was about $1,500 a month. And so he's going to pay off his home in like 5 years or something like that. It'll be mortgage free by 31. And then he says, now I'll live my life and go to Europe and do all those things. But he's focusing on, you know, I'm going to become financially independent as early as possible and live as frugally as possible, and then he's going to go wild. So what do you guys think about that?
I think that obviously the earlier you start, the easier, quote unquote easier, that can be if you always had that focus, or you don't have. If you don't wake up and have 3 children and a mortgage, then that would be a little bit easier. I think what I really admire about just everything about that piece, everything that he said about himself, he was so focused on what was important to him. So it wasn't just, oh, I'm going to start a second, you know, job, or oh, I'm going to rent out my house. It wasn't just kind of a half-hearted idea, or everybody else is doing it, or it's a good idea. It was, this is what I'm going to do. This is the length of time I'm going to do it in.
Yeah, he had a purpose.
This is the benefit to me. I really admired him for that. Yeah, and your purpose might, and again, I want to go back to, your purpose might be, I know what the best quality of my life is, and it has to have this balance of time to myself because I'm an introvert, and being able to spend time with my family or whatever. So that means that the kind of income that I can make is limited either to this amount because that's the kind of job I can have, or this because that's the sort of side income that I can get. You have to be I think you have to be really realistic about your own abilities and what makes you the happiest, not in the frivolous sense, but in the fulfilled sense.
Well, and that kind of brings back to the, you know, this whole or do what you love, find your passion, and do that for your work. Well, that doesn't necessarily need to be your full-time job, right? You can do these types of things. Like I said, I'm getting this fulfillment on the financial planning side that I certainly don't get in my day job. You know, I had in the hospitality industry, I might have had aspirations to become a CEO of like a small hospitality group or something like that. But then you look at the life of a CEO, and, you know, the travel and the work and all the stuff that goes into it, and the divorce rate and whatever, and you think, okay, well, maybe that's maybe that's not where I want to be. And so, you know, you can find these passions that are kind of over and above what you actually just need to do to make a living. And so that, to me, that's where I've found that niche, and I'm happy doing it. And for others, it might be finding that kind of full-time job that is their passion. But I have to say, keep an open mind to other possibilities and doing stuff on the side.
Yeah, I as for renting out your basement or renting out part of your house, you know, it totally depends on the person. You know, I've got a friend who she currently owns a home builder. They build about 100 homes in Regina, and I did a hangout with her, and we talked about her journey. And at 22 years old, her grandma had been a real estate for 20 years and helped her get into the first house, and on 2 conditions: one, that they rent out the basement, and 2, that they don't get comfortable. So every year they would start a new build, and they would rent out the basement, and as a young married couple, 21, 22 years old, they just basically kept going through properties, building some equity, and that's what they used. And now they've got, you know, a huge house. They've got a home building company. They kind of worked into it, and they worked hard, and that worked for them. And she said, you know, the basement's just a whole bunch of useless space. It's going to store boxes. But if my wife and I were to rent out the basement, my wife's the kind of person who would hate to inconvenience anybody. So I think her quality of life from tiptoeing across the floor would just it just wouldn't be worth it. There's no amount of money that would be worth her always feeling trapped in the house. So I mean, you got to know yourself, and you got to just be honest with it. But yeah, I think if you can rent out your basement and you're not worried about waking people up, and you're not those kind of people who are going to be freaking out because somebody's coming home at 2 a.m, then yeah, it seems like wasted space. Now, whether or not I trust renters, that's a whole different game. And I'm actually
at least you're there though. At least you're in the home. It's not somebody,
yeah, well, and that's
across
exactly
town, right?
To me, that would be different. You'd probably want to find somebody that you know, that you can kind of get along with. There's some rapport there. But I mean, I've got a house that's been sitting on the market for close to 4 months now, vacant, and I'm gonna have to put a renter in there. This is one of the scariest things I've ever done because, man, I don't know. I just don't trust renters. So we'll see how that goes. But I just want to cover my costs. This isn't a money thing. This is a how about we don't sink me anymore? So
yeah.
So I just want to sorry, go ahead, Sandy.
Well, I was gonna borrow a phrase from Paula Pant, who writes Afford Anything, and I think it goes, if we talk about time and money being assets, she always says you can afford anything, you just can't afford everything. And I think if we apply it both to time and money, at some point you're going to find a balance, as long as you know both of those things, right?
Yeah, and you know, when we had Rob Carrick on here and we were talking about Gen Y and the problems there, but I don't think it just stems to that. It's you know, we're talking about seniors or people working later in life and not retiring at 65. They're going to have to work until they're 70 and that sort of thing. And so I really think that people need to think entrepreneurially, think about the thing or other marketable skills that they have outside of a traditional day job. Maybe it's renting your basement. That's not a marketable skill, but it's something that can bring in extra bucks. Developing some other kind of talent that you can do. But that, like Sandy said earlier, that you could see yourself doing when you reach your financial independence. Because gone are the retirement days where you're just going to sit around on a beach or sit around at home. People are more active or living longer, but you want to find something to do and give back in your community or help out in a consulting capacity or whatever. And so I think if people start to think more like that and get out of this traditional mindset of I'm going to get my union job and I'm going to go to work for 30 years and then retire, that's probably not going to happen anymore. And so I just encourage people to kind of think with that open mind about entrepreneurship and using kind of that a marketable skill to get themselves further ahead and so they don't have to work until they're 75.
And with that,
I think with that we're done. We actually had a viewer. We didn't even publish anywhere, but somebody was watching the whole time. So hello, whoever you are. Thanks for watching. But now we're out of here. Goodbye.
See ya.